This is not a story about a roller coaster break-in or malfunctioning. This is a breakdown of how modern steel coaster restraint systems work, what assumptions are built into that system, and how the assumptions failed when a rider fell out of the conditions of the ride it was designed for. On March 25th, 2019, a rider was ejected from a Loco roller coaster at Adventuredome in Las Vegas, leading to the ride being shut down immediately and remaining closed for several months. What matters here is an understanding of exactly why this happened from a mechanical and operational point of view, and how the ride was changed afterwards to prevent a similar incident. A Loco is a steel roller coaster built by S&S worldwide and opened at the Adventuredome in 2014. This ride is designed to be compact, aggressive, featuring beyond vertical drops, very tight transitions, and strong lateral and negative forces that act on the rider very quickly. This is not a coaster that relies on gentle airtime or gradual movements, but instead one that repeatedly pushes the rider upwards, sideways, and into their restraints through rapid changes in directions. The trains seat 4 riders arranged in 2 across rows, and the only restraint used is a lap bar. There are no over-the-shoulder restraints or secondary belts designed to hold the upper body in. Instead, the restraint system relies on the lap bar locking down over the rider's hips and upper legs, combined with the rider's own body weight and seating position to keep them contained within the car during the ride cycle. For the vast majority of riders, this system works exactly as intended. However, on March 25th, 2019, the ride was operating normally and had passed most of its recent inspections. A woman boarded the ride as a guest and later reported and identified her as a double amputee, although public records did not specify which limbs were amputated. The lap bar was lowered, locked into place, and the strain sensors indicated a safe condition. Based on that information, the train was dispatched, and the ride began its normal cycle. At some point during the ride, the rider was ejected from her seat and fell from the moving train to the ground below the track. Emergency services were called immediately, and she was transported to the hospital. Clark County officials issued a probated use notice on the ride, meaning it was not permitted to operate for public passengers until a full review and changes were completed. The ride was shut down immediately, which is exactly how the system is designed to respond to an incident of this nature. It is important to be clear about what did not happen. There was no derailments, no track failures, and no evidence that the lap bar had opened or unlocked during the ride. There was no single broken component that caused the ejection. The restraint system functioned mechanically as designed. This is not a traditional mechanical failure. To understand why this incident occurred, it is necessary to understand how lap bar restraints are designed to work on high-intensity coasters. Lap bar systems do not measure how securely a rider is physically contained within the seat. They only confirm that the restraint is in a closed position and that the locking mechanism has engaged. The ride control system receives a simple confirmation signal that the bar is down and locked, and nothing more. Lap bar restraints are designed around a set of physical assumptions about the rider. They assume that the rider has sufficient contact between their body, the seat, and the lap bar. They assume that the rider's body weight pushes them downwards into the seat during negative and lateral forces. They assume that the rider's legs provide resistance to upward movement when forces try to lift the rider. These assumptions are normally valid for the vast majority of guests. However, on a ride like a Loco, the forces generated during tight transitions and sharp directional changes can actively lift a rider out of their seat. This restraint relies on the rider being pushed back into the seat against the lap bar for containment. If a rider does not have enough lower body contact or resistance, the lap bar may be closed and locked, but not physically restraining the rider in the way the ride design expects. This creates a situation where the restraint appears secure while containment is actually compromised. This is where the rider's body configuration becomes critically important. If a rider has missing legs or significantly reduced lower body mass, the lap bar may not make sufficient contact with the rider's body. As a result, the forces of the rider can overcome the physical containment provided by the lap bar, even though the lap bar remains locked. The ride control system cannot detect this condition because it has no way of measuring the actual rider containment. Before this accident occurred, a Loco did not have specific publicly posted restrictions prohibiting riders with amputations. The rider rules were typical for a coaster of this type and focused on height requirements, remaining seated and ensuring the lap bar was locked before the dispatch. Operators were not trained to verify restraint lock status and follow standard dispatching procedures. There was no formal guidance requiring operators to assess limb presence or unusual rider body configurations. From an operational standpoint, the ride was dispatched correctly based on the information available to the operators at the time. The restraint was locked, the sensors were cleared, and no alarms or warnings were triggered. there was nothing in the system that would have automatically prevented the dispatch. This also explains why the ride did not stop itself during the incident. The control system cannot detect a rider lifting out of their seat or losing contact with a restraint. It can only monitor train position, speed, and restraint lock status. Since all of those parameters remained within normal limits, the system had no reason to trigger an automatic stop. Following the incident, the ride remained closed for several months while changes were developed and implemented. When El Loco reopened in August 2019, the most significant changes were related to the rider suitability rules rather than the mechanical hardware. New restrictions were introduced stating that riders must have at least one functional arm and hand, and that riders with leg amputations are not permitted to ride. These rules were implemented specifically to ensure that riders have sufficient body contact and resistance for the lap bar system to function as intended. In addition to the updated rider rules, operators underwent retraining and updated procedures were put in place. Training materials were revised to emphasize evaluating rider suitability in addition to checking restraint lock status. This gave operators a clear authority and responsibility to deny boarding when a rider falls out of the physical assumptions of the restraint system. The ride was also thoroughly inspected and recertified before reopening. Inspectors confirmed that the track trains, restraint mechanisms were all mechanically sound and operating as designed. No major structural changes to the ride itself were required. For enthusiasts, this incident highlights an important reality about roller coaster design and operation. Even a properly functioning restraint system has limits based on the physical assumptions and it's designed around. Operational rules exist to keep those riders within those limits. When an unusual case exposes a gap in those rules, the correct response is to update procedures and restrictions rather than blame the ride itself. This was not a failure of engineering in the traditional sense. It was a failure of assumptions being tested by a real-world scenario the system was not originally designed to handle. Studying incidents like this helps engineers, operators, and enthusiasts better understand why those limits are in place and how the industry learns from them. This is why analysis matters, this is why rules change, and this is why dispatch is more than just confirming the restraint is locked. This has been Dispatch Disaster, and if you did like videos like this, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe button, and the notification bell. And we will see you all in the next one.